Hi friends, welcome to Knowledge Share. Today we are going to see how we can use React hooks in SPFx webpart. Many of you have heard about React hooks, which is nothing but a new way of using a functional components. So functional components and class components are the two types of components which exist in React throughout the versions. But from React version 16.8, they have introduced hooks, which allows us to use states and props in the functional components, and which also makes the maintenance and the way we can refer the child components and the parent components and the component hierarchy using hooks is very simple and very easy to maintain, and it is very easy to learn and use even in the big projects. So here I'm going to show you how you can convert the default class component SharePoint webpart framework webpart into a hooks component, because by default when you create a SPFx webpart it will use a class component, but I will show you how you can change the class component into a React hooks. So now let us see how we can do that. Here you can see I have created a testing page where I am running the SPFx webpart. So to save the time, I have already created a webpart. So if you see here, it's running, the code is running, and it is a default webpart. I haven't made any changes. So when you look at the class file, it is the default webpart with the class component, and you can see the props file and the actual TSX, the component file. So maybe what I can do is I'll just try to change I'll just save the file. So let it load. So when I refresh the page, you can see it is updated. So I'm running the code from here. So now let us see how we can use the functional components. So the first thing what I will do is I will just add a reference to few of the modules like import so FC, which is a functional component, and I'm also going to use the hooks called the commonly used hooks called use effect and use state. So I'll be explaining this in a later part of the demo, but for now, so first we have to declare what are all the things we are going to use: the functional component, use effect, and the use state hook. The next what I will do is, so my preference is I'll be using the props and the component design on the same file. So here if you see, there is a separate file for this props. So usually what I will do is I'll just cut and then paste it in the component file. So next I will just remove the reference from this component file, and there is also a reference here which is here. So I'll just change from this to component file. So that's it. So I'm not going to do any save, because since my code is running on the back end, so I will complete all the changes and then I will save. Okay. So we have declared whatever the modules we are going to use, and then we have changed the props. Now what we can do is we can delete this file later. Okay, now we are going to declare a functional component. It's very simple. Declare a constant, use the same variable and functional component, and pass in the property that's it. So this is the functional component declared, and now I will export the default functional component, so you don't have to make any changes here. So if you are not giving default, then you have to include this in a curly braces. So for now I have just exported because we have to export, so now we will resolve it. The next thing what we are going to do is we are going to cut this props and then paste it here. Since it is a functional component, we don't have to use this, we can just directly use props. Okay, so this error will go in a minute. Next is return. You can just copy the same, put it here, that's it, it's gone. So now you can just delete this export default. So now you are ready with the functional component. It's very simple, that's it. So now I have given two hooks, which is use effect and use state. Use state is nothing but declaring the state variable in a class component. Likewise, in a functional component, you can use the use state hook to declare the state. So for example, so I'll declare a state variable called loading, and then set loading is the method which we will call to set the state variable. And here I'm just going to use state, and this is a boolean variable, so by default I'll set it to true. Okay, so next is use effect. So this is a component mount method. So when you give a square bracket, something like this, so this whatever the functions or methods you are calling within this use effect will run once the component is mounted. It will not run after that, so it will be executed only once. So this is something like component mount in the class component. So in the functional component, using the hooks, you can use effect hook. Here usually what we will do is we will pass in the props. So whenever there is a change in the webpart properties, all the methods or whatever the business logics defined inside this use effect method will be executed. So here what I will do is I will just call the demo method, which I will declare it. So demo. So here what I'm gonna use it, constant demo. I've declared it. Set timeout. So I'll just give 3 seconds. So after 3 seconds, I am gonna set the state variable as false. Okay. So here what I'm gonna do is inside the div, I'm gonna check loading. If loading, display the component is loading, else display the component loaded. So what I will do, what I am doing here is I have just declared a state variable loading, and usually using this hooks you have to declare this is the variable, state variable, and this is the method to be called with the value to set the state variable. So here I am using the demo function. After 3 seconds it will set the loading to false. So once the component is loaded, since by default the state variable is true, it will first display the component is loading. After 3 seconds it will just change the loading to false so that it will say the component loaded. So now let us see this in action. So I'll just save all the files, and maybe once you have saved all the files, this props.ts is not at all required because we have removed this props and then put it inside our component file itself. So there is no need for this props file. So maybe you can remove whenever you need, or maybe if you can still hold the props.ts file if you want, if you think that you like to have a separate file for props, you can still have that. So now the web part is built. Now let us go and refresh the page. So if you see here, it is displaying the component is loading, and after 3 seconds it is automatically changed. So I will refresh the page again. So if you see here, it is displaying component is loading, and after 3 seconds it's just changed the component loaded. So this is a very simple demo, and here what I have shown you is how you can change the default class components into a functional components. So the moment they release this hooks, I am a very big fan of hooks, and all my SharePoint Framework web part and in all my demos, if you have noticed, I have used the React hooks because it's very easy to implement, very easy to troubleshoot, and very easy to maintain. So I hope you have learned something new. So guys, please, I'm not saying that you should not use class components, because people, there are few people who are very much experienced in class components and they feel that class components are very easy. I suggest you guys try hooks, which is very powerful and which is very easy to implement. And there are few places where class components for a big projects it may become tricky passing the properties for the nested child. But in React, if you use React hooks, and there are so many ways you can pass the properties or maintain the state variables, which we will be covering in a next future demos. So I will show you how you can use app context, how you can use the Redux state management service which comes with default React. So these are all the things I am planning to show you on the future demos, but for now please bear with me and try to use hooks in SharePoint Framework. Thank you guys. Have a good day. Cheers.